Okay, I'm done giving any sort of possible timeline for these videos. It's clear that due to current circumstances, I'm not going to be able to meet a consistent schedule for right now, due to me doing a bit of this, and even some of this. I've still been watching movies, of course, a lot of the letters actually. So here's a great big video for you for the holiday season, for Christmas. Okay, let's get right into it. There's a lot we have to go through. We're starting with the ends today. Number 111 is Knock Knock. Hey, it's a Thai movie. And like the last one, if you remember it, I actually enjoyed it. It's based off a traditional Thai folktale of the ghost of the same name. The legend goes like this. In a village, a man is conscripted to war while his young, incredibly pregnant wife waits. He gets wounded, and while healing, the wife dies during childbirth. When he finally gets back, his wife is still there waiting, and of course he has no idea she died. The neighbors try to tell him that she's a ghost, and each time, Nat gets a little bit annoyed and kills them in different ways, until Mac finally figures it out, and she's eventually exorcised by a Buddhist monk and lit to peace. I guess that was kind of spoilers for the whole movie. Huh. This movie was shot and directed competently. The music was really nice and fitting, although I suppose I would have no idea if it did or did not fit. It's a nice, sad story. It's not too long either. I do say that the movie does start to get boring from the middle a little bit towards the end, but overall it was an interesting experience, almost kind of like educational, really, seeing a completely different culture I've never really been exposed to. Everyone in the movie has this weird red-black teeth and gums thing going on, and it turns out that this plant or berry they eat, called betel, something like that, it eventually stains your teeth permanently to that color. So, hey, learn something new. I don't know if I can recommend this. It might be a bit too different than what you might be used to. It's kind of like Aurora, if you remember that way back in the very first part. If you're interested in the folklore and want to maybe see a different culture, then sure. There are some genuinely unnerving scenes too, I will say, so it is still kind of a horror. And also, it's not all sad and weird. 6 out of 10 is probably fair. Maybe a little bit higher in your book if you particularly value this sort of story. Check it out. Number 112 is Nobody Sleeps in the Wood Tonight. I actually had to go back and way on in the list and watch this because by the time I actually finished watching what I had intended to watch for this review, like 3 more movies got added and this was one of them. So I said, I'll just go ahead and watch this now and make this more comprehensive. This is a Polish slasher set in the classic setting of teenagers being sent to camp while a murderous, usually silent killer, stalks their every move and hacks them to bits. Or in this movie's case, the occasional bisection. I don't have too much to say about this movie. Not much of it is positive, but that doesn't mean this was a bad movie by any means. The setup is fine and intriguing enough. A lady is feeding something in her base mount in the woods, and she accidentally gets dragged under as well, becoming its next meal, and the thing beneath is let loose. Many years later, a nearby camp is taking place for the purpose of curing teenagers of their internet or smartphone addiction. I don't know how much of that is supposed to be commentary or some weird meaning for the rest of the movie. It doesn't seem like it had much to play, except that it provided an excuse as to why they couldn't use their cell phones to call for help. I don't know. It just seemed weird to put it in. I mean, there's a few examples of this specific problem, too, that you're going to see. They did a pretty good job with keeping the killer thing hidden to really give that suspense, until they said, fuck that, and they just decided to show it out of nowhere. The gore was really well done, and it was a lot of fun. It was all practical effects for the most part, and I really enjoyed it. And the characters were realistically written also, and they weren't just total douchebag teenagers. Except for a few idiotic decisions, which come off as even more jarring considering how realistic it was until they did that. The soundtrack is neat too, I'll quickly just bring that up. The reveal behind the creature, spoilers, creatures, is really half-baked. Basically, a pair of twins find a fallen piece of a meteorite and they decide to take it home. And then some black ink shoots out of it and it possesses them and turns them into boil-covered demons. What that ink or meteorite was, what happened to that rock, or why, is never really explained. It's just there and it's just gone. It seems so odd to even include that if they didn't really intend to do anything with it. Not that I have a problem with ambiguous creatures or somewhat unexplained origins, but yeah, because not everything has to be explained. But then why even have that there then? I've already talked too much about this. It's like a 6 out of 10, I guess, if you value practical gore effects more and maybe writing a little bit less, then this movie probably is a bit higher in your books. You'll get what I mean if you watch it. It's not bad. Number 113 through 16. I'm almost slightly ashamed of doing this, but I'm just gonna kind of swoop all of the Oh My Ghost movies on Netflix in one go. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I got literally 10 minutes in before I turned this off. I know I'm sinning technically against my own testaments, but I have a very good reason. I felt like I was an alien watching an entirely different species form of cinema. From the first fucking minute, I was completely confused. Like, too confused to really even pay attention. I'm not even exaggerating. I couldn't pull anything out of this. I had to do a bit of research, which was a bit fucking difficult considering that a very popular Korean drama shares the same name. The only one bit of information I was able to get out of the entire series was from a Reddit post, and I quote, "These are parody movies, kinda like a Thai version of the scary movie franchise. Everything that happened in these movies was taken from other Thai horror movies, real-life Thai celebrity scandals, notably contemporary events in Thailand, etc. They mixed a bit of that and a bit of those to make a plot out of it. The name of these movies in Thai is Hor Tao Tak, I'm not even going to guess how it's pronounced, which literally means the apartment full of screaming ladylike gays. The reason for this name is because the first movie in this franchise is a parody of the successful Thai horror movie about a woman ghost haunting in an apartment. Since that parody was so successful, they made the sequel and created its own cinematic universe. If you are not connected to Thailand, I don't know how you can really enjoy or understand any of this. I hope this doesn't sound really weird or racist out of context, but I don't know, that's like expecting a alien to understand the American Pie series. Maybe. But yeah, that's it with this entire series. I'm sorry for not no, I'm not really sorry at all for not watching it, but there's not really any point. Might as well save myself some sanity, and you too as well. If you want, you can watch literally a minute of it just to see what I'm talking about. Number 117 is Our House. So, unaware before watching it, this is a reimagining of an indie film by the name of Ghost from the Machine. I've seen quite a few reviews comparing it, but I've never seen it, so that's not going to affect this review at all, and that's probably for the best. Although I think the original had a somewhat better title, if not too much of a reference. Or if it's a reference at all, I don't know. The basic concept is that an older brother, like college age, has to take care of his little brother and younger sister after their parents die in an accident while he was working on a wireless electricity transmission device. Basically a device that constantly emits electrical charges and then charges everything within its radius. Anyways, he gets back to work on it for a while after their deaths, and it turns out that it happens to make ghosts materialize in its radius, basically by amplifying their already present electronic signals or something. A ghost machine. I had a pretty good time with this movie. The acting's pretty great. The child actors are good, believable, and not annoying, which is the most you can really hope for with child actors. And the script and directing were also pretty good. I don't want to say too much, honestly, but there's not really much to say here. It's just kind of an all-around good movie. The only thing that held it back were the special effects and scares. The movie could have definitely been scarier, and the effects were part of the reason it wasn't. They did the whole CG smoky ghost effect, which never looks good because CG smoke is way too easily recognizable and it takes you out of it. They did at least, however, towards the end, find a way to make the smoke effects work and make some pretty neat visuals. I also wish they pushed the ghost or calling effect of the machine a bit further. I guess it's almost like a family movie version of From Beyond, if anyone watching knows what that is. I'd say it's a solid 7 out of 10, and a solid recommendation as far as being a solid movie. Just don't expect to be scared, which is why this score isn't really much higher. Alright, moving on to the P's, starting with number 118, P. Okay, so I need to make an amendment to my 2 rules, which are, I've already seen it, a sequel without the original on the platform, and no pedophile movies. I don't even want to talk about this. I don't want to be associated with it. I got maybe less than halfway through before I turned it off. I'm kind of upset that I even went that far in. It involves, and I confirmed this, a 17-year-old actress doing really suggestive things on screen, and she might have even been younger just because of the filming time. And I felt really, really gross. So I decided not to watch it. And to make things even grosser, the actress took this job because she needed to pay for her mom's hospital bills, and the first choice for the lead quit. Apparently, they had to tone it down during filming. Jesus Christ. Alright, yep, that's it. That's P for pedophile. Number 119, Pog Pog, 9 Lives. And I also made it like 50 minutes in before I got bored and turned this off, which I didn't really think I would do, and it's disappointing because it had an okay start with a somewhat likable protagonist girl who heads a funeral home, but it just wasn't going anywhere interesting, and it just got really boring, and the movie literally spelled out its own events. Just wasn't interesting. Don't worry about it. Number 120, Paranormal Activity. Add this to the micro list of movies completely unnecessary to talk about. I mean, what can I say? It's one of the early found footage films, not the first one, that completely turned a genre on its head by making executives realize, no, and again, it's not the first, I believe that spot belongs to Rec, a Spanish zombie movie, but Paranormal Activity really kicked up this trend of, hey, if we keep nickel and diming every horror movie we make, the return will eventually be really stupidly high. And by the way, this isn't even just horror movies, like this is how all cinema is being made right now, and due to COVID, it's all kind of crashing and burning, so that's fine. But anyways, yeah, it's fascinating watching this movie again because so much of it just does not work. If you somehow don't know what this movie or series is, then the plot is basically that a girl and her boyfriend, mostly the boyfriend, start setting up cameras to investigate the strange happenings around the house, specifically an entity that has apparently been following the girl for a long time now. The gimmick, of course, is that it's a really shitty handheld or tripod position camera with a bunch of boring flat shots and not to pay any cameramen. The whole point of this is that they're just going for hardcore realism and subtlety, but like I said earlier, it just doesn't work because none of the characters are realistic. The sequence of events aren't realistic, and neither is the entire script. The boyfriend is a complete douche who keeps filming and does the exact opposite of what literally everyone in the movie tells him to do, and he just keeps making everything worse. It's like watching a live-action version of Goofus from Goofus and Gallant. I'm sure that when this first came out, it was kind of, I don't want to say scary. I remember liking this, but I was a kid at the time, and I quickly grew out of it. It's a gimmick that very quickly wears off, and you can make found footage work, but it just doesn't. But it made a lot of money, so who cares? It's just pretty bad and boring. But I guess I can recommend it as far as a historical watch, just to try and see to understand where the really, really cheaply made movies got their terrible ideas from. It's like the 80s all over again. 4 out of 10. There really isn't much value here. You're fine watching something else. Go watch Hell House LLC. I've already mentioned this a million times now. Number 121 is Paranormal Investigation. This is going to be another short review. It's a French found footage movie about a 20-something dude who gets possessed after playing with the Luigi board. Has someone done this joke yet? Probably. But maybe it's so unoriginal that no one wanted to make it. Anyway, some other French guy with a goatee offers to investigate the dude for his parents. He's not straight up demon-ridden like The Exorcist, he's just acting like an apathetic dick, I guess. I was somewhat optimistic because of how restrained and, I guess, grounded the characters were, but the movie doesn't really go anywhere interesting. I'm struggling really hard to pull any details out of this, except for the part where he heils Hitler in the living room because he was possessed by a Nazi. I like the neon lighting, I guess. It wasn't really bad, just not interesting, which is one of the worst things a movie can be. 5 out of 10 because it didn't really offend or dazzle me. I don't think there's too many found... Actually, you know what? I don't think there's too many found footage movies up ahead, so I'm going to quickly recommend a few to make up for this lackluster movie. Lake Mungo, that's a good one. That's a slow and atmospheric movie. You've probably heard of it. It's Australian. Troll Hunter, not the cartoon. That's a review for a different day that I'm never going to do. Because it's entertaining and fun and weird. The Banshee chapter, because it takes a neat, conspiracy, otherworldly MK Ultra look that's really neat to watch. Also plays with radio frequencies being creepy, and that's really nice. Hell House LLC, the first one, which I mentioned earlier, that should be on Shudder still. It has some legitimately freaky sequences and realistic character reactions to spooky shit happening around them. So yeah, these found footage movies, they're out there. You know, just watch this small handful. Don't worry about all the other ones. This shouldn't be a genre to begin with. Number 122 is Pari, or Pari, I don't know. What a turd. It was an attempt, an artistic attempt that was an artistic turd. There's not much I can say about this one either. I really wish I had stopped watching after 30 minutes, but I finished it anyways. It's in black and white a lot of the times, and I didn't actually hate this movie that much, but because I can appreciate an attempt at the very least. But this movie really did kind of suck, or not kind of, just it just sucked. The plot is the baby girl child died a long time ago, and now she's a ghoul brought back from the dead by the wife with a Necronomicon that just happened to be in their personal library, and they made sure to show that it was there beforehand when the husband pulls it out and puts it back down for no reason. 4 out of 10. I would have rated it lower, but I can tell that somebody actually tried, even if it really sucked. Normally, I don't give out effort medals, but I mean, I gotta do something for this. Number 123 is PMAC. So this was really interesting, and I kind of lucked out here with the way this worked out. So remember Knock Knock, that first movie I reviewed in the ends, and how that's like a serious attempt at adapting a folktale about a lady who died waiting for her husband away at the war? Well, this is a comedy adaptation of it. I'm hesitant, but I'm glad to say this might be the first horror comedy on the list that made me laugh at least 3 times, which is a lot more than a whopping 0 almost every one so far has accomplished. But keep in mind, most of this was not funny and kind of hard to sit through. It's the same framework as Knock Knock, but instead of just mock, he has a group of friends that exist just for the sake of comedy. And Mac looks more like a weenie than the other Mac who looks like he's about to come fuck some shit up. And the thing about this movie is that it does kind of grow on you, and it's just a nice way of saying I had to sit through this, and eventually my mind decided to enjoy what it could. It's not a complete adaptation, as you might have guessed. It's more of a comedic, happy ending than Knock Knock did, and that's about it. The movie's a real mixed bag. Nothing really funny happens until like the middle to end part, if you make it that far. The movie is a very, very, very tentative 5.1 out of 10. It's just enough to be a recommendation. That's only if you watch Knock Knock beforehand. Alright, let's move on to the next movie because we're not done with this cast of kooky characters and actors. Number 124 is Phobia II. Technically, this doesn't trip my sequel rule since it's just another collection of anthologies, so there's not really a need for the first movie. 5 different movies made by 5 different Thai directors, and I'm only going to spend time on the movies that I liked here. The Novice, the first one, is about a kid who chucks rocks at cars and then became a Buddhist monk because he got a little bit too good at chucking those rocks and became a tree ghost or something. The Ward was really nice. It's about a dude who gets in a car accident and is waiting to be discharged from the hospital. I really like the way they portrayed the accident with a low-angle shot of his gurney put to car wreckage noises. The patient that happens to be right next to him in this room is a leader of a weird-ass cult. He keeps fucking with them throughout the duration of his stay. It's almost kind of funny. But yeah, I'd recommend that one. Backpackers was about lame-ass zombies. Whatever, ignore it. Salvage was about some kid who got lost in a realtor garage and past accidents happened to haunt the mom trying to find him. And now, in the end, is the best movie on this anthology, and it's also the most fun. It's about a film crew trying to finish filming a horror movie when the ghost girl actress gets hurt and goes to the hospital, and then she comes back a little bit different and a little bit more dead than before. As I was watching this movie, something was bothering me, and I finally figured it out. This guy, he looked familiar, and finally, him. Oh my god, it's the friends from fucking PMAC. For some reason, they're all together in this movie. I got curious and did some research, and it turns out that they were in Phobia 1 as well. So this story's like a soft sequel to the short film in that movie. They're a lot more charismatic here. They have nice chemistry, and it just goes to show sometimes a good director can bring out the best in lesser actors. I can't really rate this. It's even more of a mixed bag than the other anthologies. Just watch The Ward and In the End, the second, and which is the second, and then the last movies in the anthology. So it shouldn't be too hard to just get to that, or you can probably find it ripped somewhere on YouTube. I don't care. Number 125 is Pizza. This was a pretty interesting movie, at least for the most part. I'll quickly mention this movie's super neat but kind of crappy CG intro. It was a fun entrance to this oddball of a film.
All we are saying is give pizza a chance.
This movie is about a pizza delivery dude who is getting engaged to his girlfriend, who happens to be a horror writer, and this dude also happens to hate the supernatural, both for logical and fear-driven reasons. One day on a delivery, his boss ends up revealing that his wife the boss's wife, has been possessed by a ghost for a while now, and our main character, Kunal, isn't too pleased about the revelation of the supernatural. Eventually, he makes a delivery to the mysterious woman at this bungalow, and he ends up trapped in what appears to be a terrifying haunted house. The scares and events that happen in the house are really neat. Gunal is a character you do kind of actually care about, and both of these put together make for a pretty enjoyable watch. On top of this, there's like this weird crime pizza restaurant angle with the boss and how this all relates to the haunted bungalow he keeps being dragged back to, and then the ending ruins almost the entire thing. Spoilers from here. It turns out none of the ghost stuff was real. None of it was. It was all a scam concocted by Kunal and his wife to steal the diamonds that his boss was trying to illegally smuggle or hide or whatever in the deliveries that Kunal would make for him. The whole thing was a front to scare the boss into thinking his wife was possessed and that Kunal had died so that he'd forget about the whole millions of dollars worth of diamonds thing. It's literally a Scooby-Doo ending. The ending salvaged like 10% of it. Like literally like just 10%. Which is basically just when he gets to make his final delivery, he ends up trapped at the same house by ghosties for real. Yeah. Anyways, everything but the ending was pretty enjoyable, so stop at about an hour 20 and you'll be pretty happy. 6 out of 10. Number 126 is Polaroid. It's basically like that Goosebumps story. A sad girl gets a Polaroid camera that when you take a picture of someone with it, do I even need to say it? One thing I want to point out is that there's zero cleverness or fun to this movie. It's not like when she takes a picture, they die in a Final Destination sort of way. It's just this shitty-looking demon comes out of the dark and fucking murders them with its bare hands. Like, any normal murder-hungry person would do, I guess. I'll list some positives since there weren't many. Even though the premise is stupid, it's still something that could be a lot of fun. And the music and directing was alright. Unfortunately, all this was marred by a huge technical problem. The movie was too fucking dark. I had to rely on sound for whenever anything scary actually happened. See that? You see that? Because I sure didn't until I rewinded it multiple times. It's inoffensive, but nothing really to it either. 4 out of 10. Just watch the Goosebumps stuff. Number 127 is the world-famous Poltergeist. This is a classic that most people in the world have seen, except for me and my roommate apparently, so we got to watch this. I don't want to say too much about this movie either, because of how incredibly batshit off the rails it gets within 10 minutes. If you know anything about this movie or its iconic scenes, then you know what I'm talking about. Hell, they've been parodied to death by literally everything. Even Family Guy did a shitty parody of it. Quick plot notes. There's a neighborhood housing project going on, and the project lead's house is having some weird ghostly shit happen, and then his daughter is getting some communication with the other side, and she gets kidnapped through the TV. They recruit some medium or ghost hunters to get some help, who are completely out of their fucking league, and like I said, it goes off the rails real fucking fast, and the movie does not stop to get re-railed back on. It just goes completely out of the park and swan dives into the Pacific Ocean in the mouth of a giant gaping shark. It's fucking nuts, and I loved it. This movie really harkens back to a time where horror movies weren't just shitty, low-budget cash grabs left for fledgling or no-name directors. Steven Spielberg wrote this movie, for God's sake, and I don't need to tell you that his name is not a small one. This actually felt like a cinematic horror experience, and I loved it. Fun fact, same director as Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Tobe Hooper, which does explain the off-the-rails part a bit. 8.5 out of 10. Check it out. Number 128 is Priest. This is about as much of a horror movie as Blade is, less so honestly. This is a dystopian action movie about a Jedi, priests, who were trained to slaughter the vampire threat that's been plaguing humanity since the dawn of time, and when the vampires have all but been extinguished, they were hidden and forgotten. Until our main priest's niece gets kidnapped by a mysterious human vampire, and he has to get her back doing high-octane, over-the-top, CG, slow-mo, shuriken shredding, knife-throwing, motorcycle riding, train hijacking action. Oh yeah! This movie is loosely based off a manhwa of the same name, and if you don't know what a manhwa is, it's basically like a Korean comic or webcomic or manga. It's very, again, and this is very loosely based off it. The original story is about fallen angels or some shit. I want to briefly again mention a very cool animated sequence, this time done in 2D by the genius director Genndy Tartakovsky. He knows. Samurai Jack, Dexter's Lab, Primal, Symbiotic Titan, that guy. Oh, this movie is a barrel of stupid, mindless fun, one-liners, and horrible acting. Oh, and that guy from The Boys is here too. It's absolutely silly and ridiculous, as I've said a million times now, so you know exactly whether or not if you'd watch this movie or enjoy it. I enjoyed my time. It was a nice break from the paranormal or conjuring ripoffs on this list, but not really a horror movie. I give it a 7 out of 10, mostly just because of how much fun I had. Number 129 is Prom Night. This was such a bland, uncreative slasher that I was mildly fascinated by how bare bones and little they did with absolutely anything. I actually had gotten this movie initially confused with a different slasher due to the similar premise, but I just forgot the name of it. That movie was My Super Psycho Sweet 16, and I was excited because I remember that movie was at least somewhat fun and had entertaining kills, which was the opposite of this movie. So, okay, yeah, the girl had a super S-rank stalker teacher who murdered her family. That guy gets carted away to the mental institute, and years later, she has her prom night with the most privileged fucking people I've ever seen. I remember my prom night. It was a masquerade party, so I thought it would be really funny if I wore that weird S&M mask Kaneki from Tokyo Ghoul wore as my mask. And then me and my friends got lost on the way there and had to take directions from a homeless guy, and the rest was boring. This movie was less exciting than my banal story that I just gave you. So the stalker breaks out. They decided not to tell the girl and get her back home from the prom because they don't know if the stalker who murdered her family to get to her would be crazy enough to follow her to the prom, and they thought that prolapsing her PTSD would be worse. Anyways, a guy shows up, disguised as janitor, and for the rest of the movie, can you guess how he kills people? Can you guess what the kills are? It's all one. It's one guess. It's all you need. He literally just jumps out of a corner and stabs people. There's no cleverness or variation. It was like I was watching Polaroid again. I was holding my breath to see if he would do anything else, but he literally just jumps out of a corner and stabbed people to death, and then eventually the temporary boss from the office shoots him, and then that's it. They had this entire like hotel prom set piece to work with, and they did nothing with it. It's honestly shocking how little creativity there was in this. The pieces were there, they just didn't care to use it. 3 out of 10, I guess. I know on Rotten Tomatoes and these other places, people rated it a lot more harshly, and that's probably more fair, but I mean, there's better movies, dude. Number 130 is Psycho, a tribute to Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho that has absolutely nothing to do with Psycho other than the serial killer is in it. This movie was long as shit, but I enjoyed it, I think. I almost gave up on this entire thing, honestly. This movie is such a big pendulum of fantastic directing and utter shit that it gave me whiplash. It's very bizarre. Some things are very competently shot or directed, and then other decisions are bafflingly dumb, which makes you wonder if two different directors just rolled the dice and took turns making a movie depending on what number it landed on.
அந்த கண்ணு தெரியாதவனா
அவன் தான் உன்னை பிடிக்க போகிறான். இப்போ நீ என்னை கொன்னுட்டா இன்னும் 7 நாளில் என் பர்த்டே. அன்னைக்குள்ளே உன்னை கண்டுபிடிப்பான். என்னை நீ கொல்லலைன்னா இன்னையிலேருந்து 7வது நாள் என்னை இங்கேருந்து கூட்டிகிட்டு போயிடுவான்.
This movie is about a blind, hopelessly in love stalker dude and his bro who have to save his object of affection from a psychopathic serial killer who is holding her captive as he gruesomely murders and decapitates victims in a quick, brutal, and emotionless pattern. The tones of this movie feel completely disparate from each other. There's this weird comedic love story parts, and then the killer just will fucking drive a screwdriver through the throat of a woman in a parking garage before decapitating her. And the actor for Gotham, the blind guy, he is not so great, but the guy who plays the killer does a pretty fantastic job of portraying that odd emptiness. Then there's these pants-on-head stupid lover comedy scenes, which I mentioned before, but then there's also these beautifully melancholic shots interspersed throughout the movie, and it's such an oddball. I do say that the cast of characters are all pretty likable, and you do root for them, especially the brother and the bitter, paralyzed police officer lady. I'm going to give this movie a tentative 7 out of 10. I don't know if I can recommend it because it's so long, and also because of the disparate qualities of it. If you can make it past the first 30 to 40 minutes, which is a tall order, I think you'll be invested. If not, skip it. By the way, I believe I already mentioned this now, but I'm going to reiterate my new rule here. If a movie does not at least somewhat intrigue or interest or stoke some sort of emotion in me other than boredom after 40 minutes, I move on. And I've already done it a few times, but I'm just making sure you know that. And honestly, it's a pretty great rule to have regardless. Alright, moving on to the R's now. Number 131 is Ragini MMS. This Indian movie was about a douchebag boyfriend and his girlfriend on a getaway to a cabin that's rigged with cameras and shot in found footage, and the reason it's rigged with cameras is so that he can film a sex tape and sell it. Apparently this is in reference to a similar incident that happened in real life with a college girl. Anyways, really shitty ghosts appear and it was awful and boring and worthless, so I skipped it about 40 to 50 minutes in, which was way more time than I should have spent on it. Yeah. And you know what, I'll just go ahead and knock this one out too. Number 132 is Ragini MMS 2. Second verse, same as the first, skippity skipped. It's like Grandma's Farm all over again, or Grandmother's Farm, whatever the hell it was called. Number 133 is Rakosh. Wow, it's nice to be pleasantly surprised. This is a Bollywood movie about two mental patients in an asylum in India, a place that's horribly over capacity, and the patients are treated equally horribly and abused. Every night, some creature or person or entity named Rakosh has been killing out the patients. And the two heroes have to figure out why and try to stop it, while also being insane. Again, keep in mind, none of these guys are right in the head. They aren't over the top annoyingly insane or anything, they're just not quite in their right mind. Oh, I forgot to also mention, this is all shot in first person like Hardcore Henry, but it's not as nauseating, although that movie's nauseating in a good way, at least in my opinion. Bersa, whose view we are looking through, is a schizophrenic dude who hates water and was abandoned by his family. Kumar John, the other dude, is simply a senile old man who predicts Rakosh's kills based off fortune disc card things that have pictures taped onto them. The directing style works pretty well with the script and characters. The themes of the movies are portrayed pretty well throughout, something I want to quickly point out. There's a notion of the mentally ill being neglected, which is shown through the way of our main character, who is constantly cut off or ignored during practically every scene or conversation, and now he's pretty much just treated as a dumping ground for no reason he knows nor that he's really responsible for. It's nothing incredibly deep, but it works. There's also these bizarre musical numbers that, for the first time out of all these Bollywood movies, actually has a purpose that works and makes sense. There's this musical number where Barsar and Kumar John have a brief escape into the city where it's almost romantically shot. And it's used as a method to quickly show their little adventure throughout the city. And with the first taste of freedom they've probably had in ages. And it's paralleled later on with a flashback of Barsar's memory of going through the city with his dear sister, shot in much of the same way. See? This is how you make something that absolutely does not belong in a horror movie work. It moves the plot along, has a thematic purpose that's later brought full circle, and it's actually enjoyable to watch. I don't want to talk too much about this movie anymore. I just highly recommend that you watch it. It has a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it. I will say that as a flaw, that the twist or plot twist is somewhat predictable. You can guess it from the start, but I don't think the point was to make it hard to figure out or guess anyways. For me, this was an 8 out of 10. I don't know if other people would enjoy it as much, so if all this sounds fun or interesting to you, it's a hearty recommendation. Check it out. You'll be pleasantly surprised. Number 134 is Rattlesnake. This is a thriller about a mother whose daughter got bit upon by a rattlesnake, and then a medicine woman mysteriously heals the daughter, but at a cost. If she don't kill someone else by sundown and take the daughter's place, the daughter dies, soul for soul. You know, at the time, I didn't think the movie was bad. I thought it was cohesive and neat and well constructed. And then I realized something. I only really paid about a third of my attention the entire movie and was able to absorb and observe every little thing. I was writing reviews for the movie that I'd already watched the whole time with my head towards the second monitor, and I was still able to absorb the entire movie with absolutely no confusion. That's a bit different from drawing, where I can pay attention to both well enough, and if I'm writing something, it's almost impossible for me to pay attention to something else, yet I was somehow able to absorb this movie completely. That means if I wasn't doing something else mentally stimulating, I would have probably been bored out of my mind. And then I thought more about the movie as a whole and realized, yeah, it's pretty shallow and empty. It was shot and directed well. The main character was kind of the saving grace too, but the plot and script was just, The whole turmoil over the morality of killing someone else for a daughter or someone else to save an innocent has been played out before by multiple other things, and it's not like it brought anything new to the table, or did it do so in an especially good way. The other thing is that they quickly resolved the turmoil by introducing an abusive, evil boyfriend character who's hilariously evil. Oh, spoiler, I guess, but who cares? There's also a really lame part where Rattlesnake ends up biting the boyfriend after she fails to kill him in some canyons. It's clever, because this caused a problem in the beginning, and now it's solving it. Isn't it smart? Am I being sarcastic enough? It wasn't that bad, though. Like, 5.5, 6 out of 10? I don't know, depends on you, I guess. It's just not super interesting, though. It's... You'll forget about it. I forgot about it until I started reading the script. Number 135 is Ravenous. This felt like a pretentious art house zombie movie, which it pretty much was. You know, for a while, I thought I've seen just about every kind of zombie movie, but I guess I never saw a slow art house zombie movie, and I still didn't really like it. It's basically a bunch of different packs of characters who are dealing with the zombie stuff in Quebec, and the storylines eventually converge. But again, they don't really do anything super interesting, plot or character-wise. They're just depressed in the apocalypse, and it's hopeless, kinda. There's better zombie movies and art house movies out there. It's directed well, I guess. I didn't have much of any particular problem with it except for this really bad and obvious joke they stole from Zombieland. You know, the one where they shot the famous actor, man. What's his name? How did I forget about it? It's weird. I just didn't like it. It's not a bad movie or anything. It's like 5.8 is close to a recommendation because I can imagine other people liking it. I think. I don't know. Number 136 is Revenge of the Pontiank. It seemed promising at first, but it ended up being same shit, different sauce. Indonesian village has a monster lady thing haunting it, and it's killing folks. The movie was directed nice, I guess, and had some good production values, but everything else is pretty generic because, as you might have guessed, the plot is exactly what you expect it to be. The monster, it turns out, was a former lover to the main character while he was married. He's a cheater! And then she ended up getting accidentally murdered to cover up a pregnancy instead of just murdering a fetus, although that fetus somehow survived and instead became the child in the movie. There's a really pointless scene at the end where they gather up all the townspeople to take down the Monty Python with an iron dagger thing, but then they all end up just getting slaughtered. Then the movie tried to set up a sympathetic ending with the Ponty, but that's kind of hard to do when she murdered an entire village's male population, who were mostly just trying to keep the place safe. As far as Malaysian horror movies go on this list, this is one of the less bad ones. I don't know, 5.5 out of 10. It's really even only that much for the direction quality. I don't think you would hate it, but it's so forgettable. Number 137 is Rise of the Zombie. I'm glad that I'm really sticking to that new rule now. At first I was scared as I was watching another dime a dozen zombie apocalypse movie, but it's a new spin, and it's a very boring one. It's about a photographer who is slowly succumbing to a zombie sickness in an Indian jungle in the mountains. It's very shittily shot, directed, and acted, and which is disappointing because this guy who played the main character was actually in a different Indian movie that I liked called Rock On or something. He played the white looking guy in that one. I gave this movie like 45 minutes and I shut it off because it was so boring. Hard skip. Don't worry about it. Number 138 is Ramina. I wish I skipped this one too. This was a really badly shot Mexican horror movie about a girl named Ramina who really likes to take off her shirt for no reason, who then kills a bunch of people. Oh, did I spoil it? Whoops. The movie ruins itself in the first 5 minutes anyways, where you see all the characters dead and Ramina trying to run to get help. The problem here is that from the description thumbnail and common sense, it's obvious that she killed everyone. These sort of cold openings are really, really annoying in horror. It's rare to see it done well. Veronica did it well, which we'll get to later. And so did Hikarashi no Naku Koroni. Or Hikarashi When They Cry, which is on Hulu. That horror anime opens up when the main character bludgeoning two of the other characters to death in a bloody mess in a dark, badly lit room, and then it promptly goes to him happily having a goofy, cutesy anime time with them, not but a few minutes later. It makes you immediately question what the fuck happened, and has that tension always in the back of your mind, because you have no clue how to get to that point from the first episode. And then, of course, if you know anything about the series, you know that it gets a bit further than that. But no, does not work in this movie. 3 out of 10, fucking awful. Jesus. All right, now we are on to the S's. Done with that piece of shit, onto a new plate of shit. Number 139 is Sabrina. I'm a bit pissed that this movie is titled the way it is, because I didn't realize until I was 2/3 of the way through it. This is the third part of a trilogy, the Doll series. I could have fucking skipped this. It's not like this movie was difficult to follow because of it, but there are some context missing, but it doesn't really matter though, because this movie just feels like a Conjuring / Annabelle ripoff. Not just from the haunted doll aspect, but because plenty of movies or story that has that beat, but also that progression of what the doll is, and the duo paranormal investigators who are a married couple, and the wife who is a medium who is scared that they might die on their next venture. Is all sounding a bit familiar. I don't really have much to say that's good about this movie. The doll is so bizarrely designed. The Sabrina doll is apparently a wildly popular toy in this universe. This fucking thing that looks like a shrunken Danny DeVito in a wig. And there's also some really unnecessary CG every now and then too. There's just this fucking CG rat that just runs across the screen. It's not like a complex maneuver for a rat creature to do. Look. Go. Yes. That's how you do it. They probably spent $300 on that stupid fucking CG rat, which is about 10 times more than it would have cost it to just put a Cheerio on a rack and have the rat run across there. Also, the ending's really weird. The husband apparently went to some Fiji island and found a magic sword buried in some rocks, and the wife uses it to kill the demon, I guess. Also, stock effects fucking everywhere. Oh, and just like every fucking Asian horror movie on this list, it turns out that the husband, not the exorcist husband, the husband, did some really bad shit, and this ghost is here as vengeance or as a pact or whatever. I'm conditioned to hate older brown males now due to this movie. Thanks, Netflix. Now I'm a self-hating brown person. Just watch Annabelle. Actually, no, don't watch that either. Just watch the Goosebumps movie. That puppet's way better. This movie isn't atrocious. It's just super unoriginal and boring. 5 out of 10? Number 140 is Savitar Damodar Paran Damadollar. I was dreading this shit so much. This thumbnail made it look like some camcorder quality shit, but this Marathi movie was surprisingly well shot, and even more surprisingly, it was somewhat original and slightly interesting. This may have to do with the fact that it's based off of a play. The movie is about an author and his wife who never seem to be able to make out the sex because she gets food poisoning each time they start. A doctor and a palm reader, who is his brother, gets involved and argue about what's happening to her because, as it turns out, a personality, or ghost, of a girl named Sabitha has been possessing her the whole time and was causing the stomach pains and violent fits whenever they're about to make it the sex. It's not like The Exorcist or Conjuring or those sort of movies. She doesn't really do anything like crazy supernatural, so for a while you actually do wonder whether or not this is, as a doctor argues, a just multiple personality disorder, or as a brother argues, like an actual ghost. Savita was apparently an old friend of the author character, and she really had a hubbas for him, but he wanted her hot friend instead, which is the wife. The girl then burned herself alive in response, and reasonably so. So it's not like the wife didn't know who this person was. They were all close friends, so it's perfectly reasonable to argue about what's actually going on. The third act gets incredibly silly when it turns out that Sabita says she won't leave unless the palm reader bro fucks her. The brother gets incredibly upset and dips the fuck out, which is one of the most relatable and logical responses I've ever seen in a movie. The author eventually pleads to his brother, although he literally strangled him for the brother to give his wife that good. This movie also had a weird gray ending, which I kind of liked. There's also a lot of really shitty stock sound effects or public domain orchestral music that ruins a lot of the attention. Just don't have it if you don't need it. There's no need for this shitty music. I don't know if I'd recommend this movie. I was both laughing and somewhat intrigued by it. It's such an even 50-50 in my head, kind of like Friend Request, but a lot less annoying, so maybe 5.9 out of 10. That's such a stupid fucking rating, but I don't want to give this a complete, total recommendation. It's more interesting than Rattlesnake, but I don't know. If what I said sounds interesting, watch it. Number 141 is Scary Movie 5. Uh-oh. This was horribly unfunny, and I skipped it after 40 minutes. And what's fucking insane is I was shocked to relearn that it was 40 minutes. I thought I only watched 5 minutes of it. I don't remember anything about this. If you're going to watch these movies, then you're going to watch them. Number 142 is Secrets of the Hot Spring. Weird Chinese horror comedy. It was shot really odd, Random gay jokes. It was very uninteresting. Safe skip. Number 143 is Session 9. This movie's been on my watch list for about as long as this movie has been on Netflix, and I was in middle school when I first remember spotting it, so that's a long ass time. This was a very odd but interesting movie. It's about a contractor whose job is to remove asbestos from really old, nasty ass buildings, and this particular project involved an abandoned insane asylum. This movie is shot in this really odd digital quality, not too unlike that awful made-for-TV Carrie movie I reviewed way earlier, but it works in this movie's favor, I think. There's this ongoing theme of paranoia, hidden personalities, and impending doom throughout the entire movie, kind of like what asbestos will do to you.
Itty bitty piece of this shit may have gotten into your lungs, man. It incubates in your lungs. Tissue begins to grow around it like a pearl, like a time bomb. Time you hit 30, boom! You're drowning in your own lung fluid.
Basically, the plot involves an old case where a girl who suffered from multiple personality disorder was committed in that asylum, and one of the workers who had attempted to become a lawyer before finds more and more tape recordings that reveal an interview with the girl and what actually happened all those years ago, and how it relates to the weird happenings going on in this project. I'm not doing a really good job of explaining this movie, but that's just kind of the sort of film this is. There's not much to explain. Well, I wish I could explain whether or not this actor is supposed to have an accent or not, or if he's really bad at hiding his original accent.
Now all these tails will have to go. These are deadly. Bidding process. I mean, the deadline's Friday. Paperwork on my desk. I know. We'll be in on Monday. We'll be out the following Monday.
I enjoyed it. It was interesting. It wasn't fantastic, though. I think a 6.3 is fair, which doesn't seem very high, but it's... I don't know. It's a weird movie. And I like weird movies, so yeah. The ending does feel a bit silly, but yeah, it's fine. Check it out. Number 144 is Seven in Heaven. My thoughts and conclusions are largely the same as Session 9's. This is a movie about a somewhat dorky dude who goes to a party and has to play the 7-Eleven game where you have to have sinful sexual intercourse with a person in a nasty dirty closet within 7 minutes, or they ceremoniously force you to commit harikiri, or something of that nature. I don't know. I don't go to many parties, so that rule might be a little bit different. By the way, I'm pretty sure that's a dorky dude in the second season of American Vandal. Anyways, when they finally emerge from the closet, everything is a bit different. It turns out that our two characters, ended up in a weird alternate reality, and it seems that our main character, American Vandal, committed a heinous crime in this universe, and the rest of this movie is basically him and that girl trying to get back into their world while they make sense of what the hell is going on. It is really interesting, and I like the odd sci-fi fantasy elements. It gets really odd towards the end, but personally, I think they could have taken it a lot further, so not odd enough. Regardless, I enjoyed it. It's a little bit better than Session 9, I'd say, or more entertaining than Session 9, I'd say. A 6.5 out of 10. Give it a look-see. Number 145 is Shudder. Hey, it is the same director as PMAC. This was an interesting horror movie, and look at that. I'm not disappointed, and it's been 3 movies. That has to be a record. I was kind of scared this was going to be the exact same dumb shit as Polaroid and I'd have to scream into the mic again, but I think the camera stuff here is actually handled much better. Basically, we have a photographer and his girlfriend. They accidentally mauled a woman in the road with her vehicle, and now they appear to be haunted, and his friends who had also attended the party seem to be getting picked off. So instead of the camera itself being haunted or you take a picture with it and you die, it's more like the ghost that's haunting them is only visible when they use the camera. So it's still there, just only seen in photos and stuff. The film quality is nice and it does work for the movie. There's a decent atmosphere too. The scares are alright. It works better as a horror movie than the previous two. It's nothing too phenomenal, but I enjoyed it. It had the same predictable twist or reason for haunting that every East Asian movie so far has. If you know what I'm referring to, then yeah. But yeah, there's decent stuff. It's not bad. 6 out of 10, I'd say. Go ahead. Check it out. 146 is Silent Hill Revelation. And thank God, this is a sequel to something that I haven't seen. So skippity skip. Apparently this movie is atrocious compared to the first one anyway, so there's your review. 147 is Sinister II. So I've seen Sinister 1, so I do have to watch this piece of shit. Now, I saw this movie a long-ass time ago, but I could not remember anything about it. But to be blunt, it's hilariously bad. This movie involves our friendly neighborhood bughoul at his stupid fucking annex again, making kids film really embarrassing snuff films and foot-stomping videos again. The snuff films themselves are sort of unsettling, like in the first movie, but it's done a lot better in the first movie. And the presentation of it in this is really funny instead of creepy. This movie centers around a mother and her twin sons, one of which is being haunted by a Bogolian child, who is trying to convince him to make his own snuff film and foot stomping videos. Meanwhile, the brother is jealous because he was chosen to stomp on grapes and butter instead. Oh, and make snuff films. But by the way, at no point in the movie do they point to any sort of like psychopathic tendencies with this kid. He just wishes he was chosen to make a shitty snuff film. But yeah, spoilers from here. But who cares? Movie is ass. The mother's cartoonishly violent and abusive husband shows up and then takes him to his home. Oh yeah, Jake Gyllenhaal's in this. I should have mentioned that earlier. He's a protagonist. He shows up to save them because he was in the first movie, I guess. At that point, the Bogulios say fuck it, and they just use the mean twin to do the snuff film because the nice one doesn't really want to. And at least with chase scene with the funniest possible ending they could have done with this sort of premise.
You're not making him a film.
No! No, no, no! No!
Then Bagul turns Mean Child into a skeleton and the movie ends. Oh, and there's a really shitty jump scare ending. I mean, it's really funny, but it's pretty unbearable otherwise. 3.5 out of 10? Sure. Number 148 is Sinister Circle. I gave this movie an entire hour and I still skipped it. It was so unbelievably boring and dry, I can't even remember much of any graspable details regarding the plot or anything else. You're fine skipping it. Number 149 is Siren. This was a very whatever movie based off of a short on VHS. The anthology horror thing, not a VHS tape. These dudes go to a bachelor party and then they end up in a weird place to party. And it turns out there's this weird succubus banshee thing. Oh, you know what? It's probably a siren. It's probably in the name. It's a siren thing that sings to the main character until he ejaculates in his pants. By the way, same actress as a monster lady in the original short. I really hope she doesn't get typecasted to play weird bedraggled demon women from now on. Anyways, the main character sees that she's trapped and frees her not knowing she's a demon lady. Then she proceeds to slaughter the mean old employees in the spook house. Employee guy wants her back, and that means the main character's friend is held hostage until he gets him back, and there isn't much to this movie. It feels like a shitty made-for-TV flick you'd catch on Sci-Fi. You won't hate it, but you won't really like it either. I liked how weird some of the characters are, but that's it. 5 out of 10. Probably a safe skip unless you like this sort of schlock. Just turn on Sci-Fi any Saturday morning. Number 150 is Splatter, which is a bit of a weird one and an exception on this list. This is a 30-minute short film, although technically it's a web series, directed by Roger Corman. It was a very odd and low-budget experience that didn't make much sense until I did a little searching. Apparently Roger Corman, who is known for a shit ton of movies, I mean, he was known as the indie movie guy in the early half of the 1900s, but honestly, there's way too much to discuss about him. I'll just say you may know him for Little Shop of Horrors. Basically, he was approached by Netflix to make with a project with this pitch. This is just looking at Wikipedia. They called me and said, here's what we'd like to do. 3 10 to 15 minute segments of a horror story in which somebody is killed in the first segment, and the audience votes on who they want to kill in the second. The second must be written, made, edited, and on the air 1 week later. Then the audience will vote again. I took the idea just because I thought it would be fun, that this is something new and an incredible challenge to do everything not in 7 days but 6, as we had to wait a whole day for the votes to come in and then see who was going to be killed. So I don't really know if I can rate this. It's only 30 minutes. It was very weird and interesting. Tony Todd was in it, so sure. Give it a look. Yeah, not going to rate it. Just check it out if you want. It's just interesting B-movie-esque. I don't know. It's weird. What I'm curious about, however, is the other 7 parts that didn't make the cut. Apparently, Trailers from Hell released all of them or something. I'm not sure. I need a little bit more information about this, but yeah, weird thing. I'm surprised it's on Netflix of all places. Number 151 is Splice. I kind of wish this movie was worse because I didn't really like it for a lot of reasons, but it's fine for the most part. This is a movie about a scientist couple attempting to make a life form that is essentially stable enough for the use of organ farming or something. But the wife did something really dumb and used her own DNA in a experiment. So now they have this weird spliced human hybrid that is rapidly aging, and they gotta take care of it. Or, well, they don't have to, but the wife wanted to. But the first half or so was actually pretty decent. I enjoyed it until the creature became fully grown. Dren, by the way, that's what they named it. After that, the movie became very predictable. Spoiler. He fucks the spliced lady. Anyways, what really bothers me is that it seems like for two genius biochemists, they sure did a whole bunch of stupid shit, like using your own DNA to make a human hybrid, making the human hybrid, and instead of killing it like the husband always said, treating it like their own child instead of a test subject, raising it terribly. I mean, if you're gonna treat it like a child anyways, they just did such a horrible job. It feels like most of the problems just could have been avoided if they were just not dumb human beings. This movie does, and speaking of dumb, this movie gets really, really dumb at the end. The lab characters just randomly show up at the desolate cabin where they're keeping Dren, the girl monster. And here's what I realized. Oh my god. They needed people to show up for a body count, and that's exactly what happened. The Whammon monster pulled a Jurassic Park and then changed its gender, killing practically everyone else but the wife, and then you can guess what? It fucks her too. And then she bashes its head in with a rock. To make the movie even more stupid, the ending happened. The lady scientist is talking to the science nerd director who says, "Oh, we thank you very much for cooperating. No one would blame you if you didn't." And then the camera pans out and shows her enormously pregnant belly, and she literally says, "What could go wrong?" Such a fucking stupid second half. That alone drops it from like a possible 7 to like a 4 out of 10. I don't know. It's just, for a movie about a bunch of smart people, it really is dumb. Number 152 is Stephanie. I went from despising this to being okay with it back to despising it by the end. It is a creature feature, quote unquote, involving an abandoned girl in her home in the midst of what appears to be some sort of apocalypse, and then she tries to survive and fend off a monster that is drawn to her negative thoughts and fears. So, first thing, having only the child actor for the first 30 to 40 minutes being the only person on screen was a terrible idea. She has the opposite of charisma. I think there's a term I made up for this in a video or two ago, but I forgot what it was. She's insufferable and dumb and annoying. Like, I get that she's supposed to be a kid, but it's like they intended for her to act like a 4-year-old when the actress is clearly like 8 or 10. Thankfully, the parents do show up, and they apologize because they thought the monster had already killed her or something. Then they start doing some really weird, suspicious shit, and the movie actually starts to get kind of interesting as far as figuring out what's going on. It like became one movie, and then it was another. And so that's why I was interested. But at this point, I started to get a little bit scared. Not from actual fear, but because I suddenly thought, oh no, the movie isn't going to go in this really dumb direction, right? And then, yeah, it happened. Exactly what I was scared of. It turned out there was no monster. The monster was Stephanie. She was having psychic fits from an interdimensional demon possessing her. It's the exact same fucking shit as Eli, son of a bitch. The movie even ends the same way as Eli, minus the rotating T-posing nuns. They attempt some operation to try to kill her. Then the demon takes a hold and then murders the parents. And then there's some really bad PS2 FMV smoke covering their house. Oh my god, such a fucking stupid ending to a, again, stupid movie, just like Eli. What's fascinating is that I seem to be alone in this. It seems like people kind of like this movie, but whatever. Watch it. I don't care. It's a heaping pile of shit, though. 3 out of 10, fuck this shit. Number 153 is Still. In all caps. This was a very weird Thai anthology movie that I ended up skipping because I could not follow the directing at all. It's very odd and not very interesting. Apparently it's based off famous news headlines. Like, they looked at news headlines and made a movie based off of it. What a weird way to choose an anthology theme. Check it out if it sounds interesting. Number 154 is 3, like street, without the T. A Bollywood horror comedy. Let's fucking go. This actually wasn't bad given the standards of the really awful horror comedies I've seen so far. This is a monster/ghost movie about a skilled tailor who gets charmed by a girl who everyone thinks is a night-stalking, man-eating ghost succubus-like creature called Stree. The main character thinks the superstitions about the creature are dumb, so when he's pissing, he decides to do it on the weird, Passover-like painted signs that direct the creature to come back another day, blurring it out and inviting it to steal some dude, leaving nothing but his clothes behind. This starts happening to more and more people, and now they have to stop it. Meanwhile, he's terrified that this girl he likes is a creature due to her asking for weird shit, like cat hair and lizard tails, and that she never seems to go into religious places. Spoilers from here. nah, she's just hunting a creature or something. One thing I really do like about this movie is that they do follow the rules set for the monster from the beginning, and they take the time to see how that can explain the monster's behavior and how they can use it against it. Again, a really good example of monster movie, I guess, that follows rules is Nightmare on Elm Street. You know, the whole idea of like, I can touch him in my dream. I grabbed his hat and I woke up holding it. So therefore, if I grab him in the dream, I can pull him out when I wake up. You know, like that sort of logic following process.
अगर घर के बाहर लिख दो वो स्त्री कल आना तो मैडम पढ़ती है और सोचती है ओहो अच्छा ठीक है आज आप लोग आराम कर लो मैं आज नहीं आऊंगी मैं कल शिकार करने आऊंगी
मतलब अगर कुछ बोलो तो सुनती है
यानी आज्ञाकारी.
This movie is also pretty funny too. The bits of comedy that they did use ended up making me chuckle, and they're mostly universal humor that anyone can laugh at, so it's nothing that be confused or anything at the jokes. I thought it was really funny, for example, that a 60-year-old dad thought that he had to give his 25-year-old son the talk because he saw him talking to a prostitute. The movie isn't too scary though, but the first time you see this tree, they direct it in a really unsettling way. It just kind of floats suspended in air and chases after you. It's freaky looking. Not super scary, but it worked for this movie. So yeah, funny enough, they did an okay job with the monster and somewhat likable characters all around. It's a solid movie. I'd give it a 6.7. It's not amazing, but I did actually enjoy it. It would be a 7 if the twist ending made sense. It just felt kind of unnecessary. Oh well, it's literally like a minute at the end. It doesn't have anything to do with the rest of the movie. Yeah, if you want to watch an okay horror comedy, give it a look. You'll laugh a few times, I'm sure. It's not bad. Number 155 is Susanna, Buried Alive! It's a remake of an Indonesian movie. Indonesian. What did I say? This, like every Indonesian horror so far, involves some woman being killed by some dude who did her wrong, and then her coming back as a ghost out of revenge, and then the ending involves some angry mob with torches coming after her. This started out kind of interesting. It was from the perspective of the killed lady ghost. After she gets killed in that botched robbery, not before kicking the shit out of everybody that tried to grab her. It was almost cartoonish, like in the Dover Boys. She immediately wakes up as a ghost and then tries to come to grip with it. Some people could even still see and hear her. She hears from the house servants that the ghosts tend to come back for some sort of revenge, and then she's like, okay, I guess that's what I need to do. She then torments and haunts the killer/robbers one by one, using a really annoying witch's cackle the whole way. The movie stops being interesting from there, honestly, because it doesn't really push enough into going from the ghost perspective and becomes exactly like those other Indonesian horror movies involving a revenge ghost and an angry mob. 5 out of 10. It wasn't really bad or anything, just kind of a fart. You acknowledge it, and it's gone. And sometimes, if you're unlucky, it smells. Number 156 is Sweetheart, a monster movie with a ham-fisted message about believing women. I actually enjoyed this for the most part. This is about a girl who gets shipwrecked on an island and then she has to survive, avoiding a weird deep-sea shark man monster that haunts the shores at night. The monster design is really cool. They do a good job of concealing it and, lighting it, and it fits the setting. The movie does become a bit silly when her other friends also shipwreck on the shore later and on their functioning raft. So I guess they're not shipwrecked. Some spoilers from here, and I'm only warning you so early because, again, this is actually a pretty decent movie. So, lady who was first wrecked says, hey, we need to leave right now. There's a weird fish monster that comes out at night, but they just say, nah, I don't think so. And then they end up getting killed. At the very least, wouldn't you think if it's not a monster, maybe like a tiger or a bear or something? But then they just kind of show up to add to the body count. At the end, she then confronts the monster on her own terms. With a million little sharpened sticks, she gets her ass beat, but then kind of slowly stabs it to death in sort of like an attrition match, I guess. She then cuts off its head and then walks off with it to prove that it happened. That little bit there is kind of all they needed for the message. She didn't need to write a letter narrating and talking about how people don't believe her and how evidence is always demanded. It just felt really out of place at this point in the movie. Regardless, I enjoyed it as a monster movie. It's solid. Yeah, don't know what else to say. 7 out of 10. If you want to just see a really cool monster and see it get killing people and getting killed, check it out. Okay, this is a long video. So that's going to do it for now. I'm finally on the tease. I'm not going to promise you when the next thing's coming out. I've just been working on, again, random shit. You heard my BS in the beginning. But yeah, I obviously can't meet deadlines, so the next one will come out when it comes out. But I will say, I can say this at least. The next letter is going to be the absolute longest because it's the T's. And if you know anything about the letter T, there's a lot of movies that begin with the word the. But so, yeah, what I'm saying is once we are past that, it's really not much from there. And then I'll just use the last video to just catch up on any movies I added while I was doing this list, which isn't really that many. But yeah, we are at the we're getting to the top of the hill, folks.